Hi, my name is Martin Ng and I am a baritone, and welcome back to another episode on the Martin Ng Opera channel. I apologize for my long absence from video making because I've been busy. I've been learning new operatic roles, self-studying, admin stuff, etc, etc. Now for this installment, I am going to continue from where I left off in opera's 10 most tear-jerking moments. And to recap, in the previous episode, I dealt with 5 most tear-jerking moments, and in number 10 position, we have the O Madre Mia scene from Ponchielli's La Gioconda, and in number 9 position, we have the forgiveness scene from Le Nozze di Figaro, and in number 8 position, we have Mimi's death scene from La Bohème, and 7th position, we have Lieb Wohl from Wagner's Die Walküre, and in number 6, we have the final duet from Tchaikovsky's Eugene Onegin. So for this episode, I am going to talk about the remaining 5 most tear-jerking moments in opera. And now, which are they? And before I proceed, if you do like my channel, please don't forget to click the subscribe button and the notification bell. So stay tuned. Okay, so in number 5 position, we have Una furtiva lacrima from Donizetti's L'Elixir d'Amore or The Elixir of Love. This choice, however, seems like an unlikely one because it is not really a sad opera but actually a comic one. This opera is a bel canto opera by Donizetti. Now, what is bel canto? I think I probably dealt with this before in previous episodes. Bel canto is a period in Italian opera referring to the operas of Rossini, Donizetti, and Bellini. And these operas focus on the beauty of the voice as a main vehicle in the storytelling opera. And unlike in other operas in, say, Verdi or Puccini, whereby the orchestra actually is more like a symphonic orchestra and tells its own story, the bel canto period actually focuses on the beauty of the voice, and the composers actually call upon the singers to execute pyrotechnics, for example like coloratura or trills. All of them are required to sing fast vocalizations, melismatic passages, coloratura, trills, etc, etc. Donizetti's L'Elixir d'Amore happens to fall within that style of bel canto in Italian opera. Now, on the surface of L'Elixir d'Amore, it seems like a light romantic comedy with a silly plot involving a quack doctor and a fake elixir. However, what is so special about this opera is that it is beautifully characterized and has considerable dramatic depth and wonderful music. Like I said before, it is not an obvious choice for a tear-jerking moment. However, Una furtiva lacrima does qualify because it does talk about a tear. Una furtiva lacrima, a furtive tear. Therefore, it is not sad indeed, but it is definitely tear-jerking, a tear-jerking moment. And now let me explain. In this aria, Una furtiva lacrima, Nemorino, the protagonist, learns that his sweetheart Adina is finally in love with him. He had a rather difficult journey getting Adina to fall in love with him because Adina was always the one who has spurned his advances. However, upon purchasing the fake love potion from the quack doctor Ducamara, and consuming it, he believes that he has now the power to make Adina fall in love with him. But little does he realize that all these village girls that swarm around him asking for his attentions was not because he has become a love god by consuming the potion, but because they have now found out that he has inherited a lot of money under his dead uncle's will. And it was during that moment where he realizes that there was Adina in the corner. While he was in the midst of all the attention of these village girls, he noticed Adina shedding a furtive tear. And it is because of this he realizes that Adina actually loves him. And this, which is why he says which he sings in the aria, più cercando io vo, mama lo vedo. It is a sense of triumph of the underdog, of Nemorino, the simpleton, the simple villager, over the more attractive Belcore, the sergeant who has seemed to have won the affections of Adina. It is the triumph of the perseverance of his feelings for Adina, and it's the victory of the underdog, and that itself is, for me, tear-jerking. Number 4 position goes to Liu's death scene in Puccini's Turandot. Now, I think I probably talked about the story of Puccini's Turandot in the episode on 10 tunes in opera so prevalent and so famous that you can't deny you know opera, and you can see it on this link. Now, the death scene is a common occurrence in opera because we know that in most tragic operas, people die. Sometimes not just 1, but 2, but 3, but everybody dies. So it's quite a common occurrence in opera. But however, Liu's death scene is a rather unique one because it is a death scene combined with a torture scene. If you remember, Karloff needs to solve 3 riddles, and he solved these 3 riddles, and therefore he earns the right to marry Turandot. However, he relinquishes this right by telling Turandot that if she can find out his name before daybreak, he will willingly sacrifice his life to her. So what does Turandot do? Turandot orders that no one shall sleep in Beijing that evening in order to find out the name of the unknown prince. It is also in Liu's death scene where Turandot's followers capture Liu and Timur, who were seen to be in the company of the unknown prince. So Turandot orders that Liu be tortured so that she reveal the name of the unknown prince. However, Liu refuses, and her steadfastness actually bewilders Turandot. She actually asks her what strange power does she possess that enables her to withstand the tortures that are about to be inflicted on her. And it is when she responds to Turandot that it is the power of love. And this is actually the saddest part for me, because it is a love without hope. Carla obviously doesn't love her. So she sacrifices herself, her life for Carla, so that Carla will win the love of another woman. Now this sort of like recurring theme in opera, which I alluded to in Madre Mia in the Gioconda opera. In the end, fearing that she would eventually yield to torture and reveal the name of the prince, she grabs a dagger and kills herself. The music of Liu's death pulsates with a pathos of great dignity, and this evokes a sense of remorse and pity from the onlooking crowd. Another sad part about this death scene was because this was the last music which Puccini ever wrote. During the premiere of Turandot conducted by Toscanini, after the last music was played, in which Liu's body was being carried away by the crowd with an onlooking Timur, Toscanini stopped the orchestra and turned around to tell the public, at this point, the maestro died. So Liu's music is the final music, the final poetry which Puccini composed before dying. And it is the final artistic expression of sorrow, grief, and sacrifice. And now we go on to the third position, which for me is the final trio in the Rosenkavalier by Richard Strauss. So, what's so sad about the final trio? Let me just talk about the story first. There are four main characters: the aristocratic Marschallin, her young lover, the Count Octavian. Number 3, the Marschallin's cousin, Baron Ochs. And number 4, Ochs' prospective fiancée, Sophie von Feninal, a daughter of a rich bourgeois. So, how does the story unfold? At the Marschallin's suggestion, Octavian will act as Ochs' Rosenkavalier by presenting a ceremonial silver rose to Sophie. However, when Octavian presents the rose to Sophie, they fall in love and they soon hatch a plot to help Sophie get out of her engagement to the Baron Ochs. This was only accomplished by the intervention of the Marschallin, who eventually yields the Octavian to the younger woman. And this yielding actually happens in the final act of the opera, in a trio between the three characters, the Marschallin, Octavian, and Sophie. And for me, this is one of the most tear-jerking moments in opera. In the earlier part of the opera, Marschallin, the older lover, sort of sees the eventuality of the situation of the love affair between herself and Octavian, the young lover, that it is a relationship that will not last even as they are in love, and there will come a day where she will eventually cede him to another woman. And this is clearly reflected in the words of the trio at the beginning when she sings, I promise myself to love him in the right way, even to love him being in love with another woman. One must take note that this is not to be seen as an over-the-top tragic situation like in Italian opera, in Gioconda, or even in Liu, a typical Italian melodrama. This must be seen in the right situation with the, like Strauss himself intends, this must be seen in the context of Vienna's lightness, of gracefulness, and of a certain sophistication. The Marschallin knows the situation that she is aging and eventually she would have to give up her lover to a more positive relationship between himself and that of a younger woman. And she realizes the inevitability of it, but it is not the end of her life. She will continue to have more lovers, but that moment probably captures that instantaneous intensity of the moment that she knows that this giving up of the Octavian is the relinquishing of a certain moment in her life that she will never get back. And that's what makes it so lacerating, but at the same time not over melodramatic. So this trio must not be sung with an over tragic sentimentality as if life was going to end, but it should be sort of like taken as a bittersweet kind of lightness, half smiling, half crying, a philosophical reflection on life, on the inevitabilities of life. The music itself, I mean, this is just, I was just merely talking about the text in the situation which creates the tragic, the kind of like tear-jerking element. And this is coupled with the transcendence of Strauss's music in that moment, where three radiant soprano voices come in perfect harmony to express their own internal feelings in a moment of sublime introspection. And Strauss, to his music, makes time come to a standstill, and the Straussian melodies work its magic on the human soul.
La coscienza dei cuori destar delle genti, raccogliere le lacrime dei vinti e sofferenti, fare del mondo un ponete ora gli uomini
Number 2 position goes to Nemico della Patria from Giordano's opera Andrea Chénier. The opera was based loosely on the life of the French poet Andrea Chénier, who was executed during the French Revolution, and the character Gerard was loosely based on one of the leading revolutionaries of the French Revolution, Jean Lambert Tallien. The revolutionary ideals, the ideal world that the character Gerard has projected for himself and has fought for all his life during the French Revolution, turns out to be just a bit of lies and hypocrisy. And this really is the tragedy of Gerard. We realized through the words in the aria that the revolution has not changed society. The revolution has not changed him. The revolution merely changed his master. In the past, he was the servant of the aristocracy, the base servant, but now he has become even a more vile and baser character by being the servant of his lusts and by his obsessive passions. In fact, the aria opens with a fabrication of offences so as to get the conviction of guilt of Andrea Chénier, which will result in his execution. And he has abused his position as a revolutionary to secure the indictment of Andrea Chénier, so as in order to lure Maddalena di Coigny out, and this was merely to serve his own selfish lust for the woman. And so the aria represents the tragedy of the realization of losing the meaning of the life you have fought for so hard. And in the last part, he creates this beautiful scene, this very last melodic moment of an ideal world, of a pantheon which brings joy and brings justice, where all mankind is locked in a fraternal embrace of divine goodness. But all this is just a lie. All this is just a facade. And this is what's so sad about this aria Nemico della Patria.
Dannata, quel prezzo vendeste il mio bene. Mai nulla per loro conviene. Oh, mia figlia impagabil tesor, la rendete o sepor disarmata. Per voi buona cruenza, nulla in terra più avenza, e dei piedi difensa l'onor. Quella porta, assassini, aprite la porta, assassini,
For me, the number one position goes to Verdi's Rigoletto. But for me, it is not just one part of Rigoletto that is tear-jerking, but the entire opera in itself is a great human tragedy of epic proportions. The tragedy lies in the dehumanization of the title role Rigoletto, and his essential humanity is denied. In the court, he is not seen as a man, but as a deformed hunchback and jester, whose only role in society is to make merry and to keep his master, the Duke of Mantova, pleased and happy. And this is revealed in his first monologue. Tears, the property of men, are denied me. As such, Rigoletto's acts of cruelty and hatred is not a result of his deformity or occupation, but as a reaction to the contempt and degradation that he has received or society has inflicted upon him. However, another element of the tragedy of Rigoletto is that beneath this facade of cruelty, of cynicism, he displays a vulnerable soul capable of true love for his daughter Gilda and gratitude to his dead wife who had loved him in spite of his deformity. Gilda's this degradation by the Dilk for Rigoletto represents the loss of the only purity and innocence in his existence, and this culminates in his determination to destroy the Dilk. So you can see the tragedy is almost fatalistic. It's always like in Greek tragedy, it is Rigoletto's reaction to what fate and what circumstances have inflicted upon him, and there doesn't seem to be any way in which he can get out of it, which is almost Shakespearean in its irony. This thirst for revenge eventually destroys him, because he destroys Gilda, because through his acts he inadvertently destroys the only human being who could save him from bitterness and despair. Now Rigoletto is condemned to a life which is completely devoid of meaning, and this terrible recognition right at the end of the opera leads to a full-throttled anguish cry, "Ah, La maledizione.
Gilda, mia Gilda, e voi, la maledizione.
Comes to the conclusion of this episode for the 10 most tear-jerking moments in opera. If you like my channel, please do not forget to click the subscribe button and the notification bell for future uploads. Stay tuned for the next video, and I'll see you then. Bye!